Hey guys, today I'll be teaching you guys on how to make a region detection system in Roblox Studio. So basically, right over here, if I go in the region, you'll see that all tantrums went in the region. The output will show that all tantrums went in the region. And if we go out of the region, you'll see that all tantrums left the region. And also in this video, combined with the region detection system, I'll also be creating a sword giving system that basically works if you go inside of the region. So if you go inside the region, you'll be getting a sword, and if you go out of the region, you'll basically lose your sword, and the print statement will basically say granting sword and destroying sword. So let's get right into making these systems. Alright, so first things first, what we're going to be doing is we're going to create our own dangerous arena. So right over here, I've created my own dangerous arena, and there are four parts that surround the middle part, and the middle part basically has a surface UI, and under that, there's a text label that basically says dangerous arena, and I've also added a UI stroke that basically covers that basically gives a border for this particular text. And now, after creating your own dangerous arena, what you're going to be doing is you're going to create a region part by simply adding a part over here. I'm just going to resize this to a pretty good size, probably around this dangerous arena, somewhere like maybe like 20 studs over here. And I'm also going to change the transparency of this part to 1, maybe a bit lower than 1, so that I can show you guys how this region works. And then what you can do is you can rename this part to region part. And under this region part, we're going to be creating a script. Whoops. We're going to be creating a script. I'm just going to rename this to region script. Alright, so now first things first, what we're doing is we're going to first get the player service by simply typing local players equals game colon get service players. And after that, we're also going to get another service called run service by simply typing local run service equals game colon get service and run service. Well, you guys might be wondering what run service means. Well, run service is basically a service that allows you to script stuff that basically fires per frame. Well, basically, in a lot of games, you might have seen an FPS system. Like a lot of games might show something like 60 FPS or 40 FPS, depending upon how laggy or how smooth your gameplay is. Well, what if you want a certain part of a script to fire every frame? So basically, many games, frames per second means that every second this much frames get fired. Well, for smoother gameplay, the FPS might be around 60. However, for slightly laggier gameplay, it basically becomes 30 FPS, which is why FPS matters so much when it comes to smooth gameplay in games. And let me show you guys an example on how run service works. So right now, if I type run service dot heartbeats colon connect function, and okay, so what this does is it basically prints, this whole function runs every frame. So right now, if I print hi, let's say I'm printing hi over here, and right now, let's say I'm playing the game, you'll be able to see that a lot of hi messages are printing over here. In other words, this message is printing every 30 to 60 times per second. And that's a pretty logical explanation as to how run service works. And in this, and over here, we're going to be using run service to basically check if the player is entering the region and leaving the region every single frame, which is why we're going to be using run service. All right, guys. In run service, there are three main functions, which is render step, stepped, and heartbeat. But in this video, we'll be using heartbeat because in situations like these, heartbeat is the best one to use because heartbeat usually fires after all the physics has been loaded in the game, which is why it's probably best to use heartbeat. Well, all of these three do show the same functions. They're pretty much the same thing, except there's just a small difference, right? So for heartbeat, heartbeat usually fires right after all the physics calculation gets ended. However, for stepped, uh, the script basically fires before the physics calculations even start processing, and sometimes a step can actually be a bit more laggy as compared to heartbeat, which is why heartbeat is slightly better than step. And render stepped, this one usually only works in local scripts because render stepped is usually client sided, and if you use render stepped in a server script, this won't usually work, which is why I'll be using heartbeat in this video. All right, but before using run service, we're gonna get the region part, which is local region part equals script dot parent. And after getting the region part, what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna be calling run service, which is run service dot heartbeat colon connect function, and we're gonna hit enter. Okay, so before doing any script under run service, we're simply going to check if the player gets added by simply typing players.player added colon connect function join player. Alright, so every time a player joins the game, we're going to be creating a bool value, which by simply typing local is in region equals instance dot new bool value. All right, so every time a player joins, we're simply gonna create a bool value that tracks whether the player is in the region or not. All right, so after creating the bool value, we're gonna type is in region dot name equals is in region. If you don't name this bool value, then it's simply gonna show value when you play the game, which is why it's probably best to name bool values over here. And now, after creating the bool value, we're simply gonna put the bool value inside the player. Dot parent equals joined player. All right, so after that, we're simply, okay, let me guys show you how the bool value looks like. And okay, so now if I click play, all right, if you go to the player section and if you click under all tantrums, you'll see a bool value has been created, which is called is in region. And the value, I mean, the default value of this is usually false, but in script, you can change it to true when the player enters the region, which is what we'll be doing in the script. Okay, so after creating the bool value, now what we're going to be doing is we're going to create a function that returns all the overlapping parts by simply typing local overlapping parts table equals workspace colon get parts in part, and inside that we're going to type region part. All right, so you guys might be wondering what this function does. Well, all it does, it returns a table of all the overlapping parts that touch the region part. Let me show you guys how this works by simply typing print overlapping parts table. All right, and also guys, make sure that this part is being anchored and can collide is set to false, or else you won't really be able to get inside of the part. Okay, so now if I hit test, and now as you can see, there's a bunch of empty tables being printed. But now if I go inside of this region, you'll be able to see that the tables are being filled. And now if I click open in any one of these tables, you'll see that a bunch of parts that are being overlapped, which is the humanoid, the left foot, the left lower leg, the right foot, and the right lower leg. And these parts are basically these parts basically contain inside of the player's character, like over here, like left foot, left hand, left overarm, left upper arm, and etc. And that is the main purpose of this specific function. It returns a table of all the overlapping parts. Okay, so after creating this function, now what we're doing is we're going to loop through every single part in this table by simply typing for I, comma, overlap part, or maybe V, both are pretty much the same thing. You can also use V if you want, but here I'm going to be using overlap part to make it more clear. In pairs overlapping parts table 2. The reason why we're not using colon get children like we do many times is because this is already a table. Like it's already a table, so you don't have to use get children over here. And now after overlooping every single part, what we're doing is we're going to check if any of the part in this table belongs to a character by simply typing. Okay, so before I'm going to check for the humanoid by simply typing local humanoid equals overlap part dot parent colon find first child humanoid. Oh, humanoid. All right, so the reason why we're typing this is because not every single part belongs to the character. Like sometimes instead of the table having these parts, they could also be a part like, I don't know, like part maybe, or comma, some random parts. And that is pretty much the reason why we're checking if any of the part inside of this table belongs to a character. And a good way to do that is by checking if the humanoid exists, because only characters have humanoids. No other part in Roblox Studio or Roblox has a humanoid. Alright, so after that, we're going to type if humanoid, then if any of these parts does belong to the character, that's what it actually means if I type if humanoid then. And after the humanoid exists, what we're going to do is now we're going to get the player by simply typing local player equals players colon get player from character, which is humanoid dot parent. And what this does is basically converts a character to a player. That's pretty much it. That's what this whole function does. And after getting the player, we're also going to get the is in region, right? We're going to get this bool value because you already created this initially, right, when the player joined, by simply typing local is in region equals player colon wait for child. I'm going to type is in region. And guys, make sure you're typing this name correctly as exactly as over here, because if any small mistake occurs, like for example, if I put a small I here, then this is going to return an error. So I encourage you guys to be a bit careful over there. And after getting the region, now we're going to check if the player is entering the region by simply typing if is in region dot value equals false. We're going to check this. And also guys, before that, I forgot to do one more thing. We're going to actually create a table of all the players that are entering the region by simply typing local players in region table equals an empty table. Like initially it's an empty table, but I'll be inserting players every single time a new player gets added. You guys might be wondering why I'm doing this. I'll let you guys know this later, but for now I'm just going to create an empty table right over here. Okay, so now after checking if this equals false, next what we're doing is and not table dot find, and the first parameter is going to be a table, which is the players in region table, comma, and it's going to be the value, which is the player who touched the region. And after that, what we're going to be doing is, so gonna check if the player exists, which is player, player then. And after all of these becomes true, then we're going to basically insert this player onto this table by simply typing table dot insert players in region table. The first parameter is going to be the player table, and the second parameter is going to be the object that you want to insert, and in this case, it's going to be the player. And after that, last but not least, we're going to simply change the is a region dot value as true. Oh, as true. And that's what we're pretty much gonna be doing over here. And we can also put a print statement, which is gonna be player dot name. I'm gonna concatenate the string, and we're simply gonna type has entered the region. And yeah, that's pretty much how you can check if the player has entered the region or not. All right, so now if I go and hit play, now if I try getting inside of this part, you'll basically see that all tantrums has entered the region. Okay guys, even though this script did detect whether the player entered the region, we'd still want to check if the player left the region as well, and that is a pretty major problem when it comes to the script. Like we don't really know, we didn't really check if the player is leaving the region or not, because like initially this is false, right? Like initially this is false, but then if you enter this region, this basically becomes true, and that's it. It already is true, which is why this condition statement will basically return false, because this has already become true, and true is not equal to false, which is why this script is pretty incomplete. And yeah, we're gonna try to solve this issue. Alright guys, so now after looping through the overlapping parts table, now we're simply going to loop through the players in region table by simply typing for I comma player in region, or v, it's pretty much your choice, in pairs. Oh, in pairs. And here we're going to put players in region table, and then do. Alright, so now after looping through all the players in region, now what we're doing is we're going to check if the player has left the region. So how do we do that? What we do is that we get the overlapping parts table and check if the parts that belong to a specific player don't exist anymore. So how do we do that? Well, guys, over here, this is where we're going to be creating another function that basically checks if the uh, player left the region or not by simply typing. Okay, so over here, I'm going to create a function called local function check if player exists in region. And inside, there's going to be two parameters. One is going to be the overlapping parts table, and the other is going to be player to find. And yeah, this is how this whole function is going to look like. Well, the overlapping parts table is going to be this, and this is going to be the player to find. So exactly what we're doing here is that we're going to check if these players parts exist in this overlapping parts table, and that's what we're exactly trying to do inside this function. Let me repeat it one more time. We're trying to find, we're trying to check if this player's parts belongs in this table, and that's what we're exactly doing over here. So how do we do that? What we do is we first loop through this table like we did over here by simply typing for I comma uh, overlap part in pairs overlapping parts table do. All right, so now what we're going to be doing is, okay, so we're going to get the humanoid like we did over here by typing local humanoid equals overlap part dot parent colon find first child humanoid, which is right over here. And now what we're doing is when we're typing if humanoid, then if any of these parts inside of this overlapping parts table belong to a heart, that's what we're checking over here. And if it does belong to a character, what we're going to be doing is we're going to get the name of the character by simply typing local character yeah, character equals humanoid dot parent. And then now what we're doing is we're going to check if the name of the character equals to the name of this specific player by simply typing if character. All right, guys, you know what? I think it's better to get the player into the character. I think that's a slightly better thing to do. We can also check the character, but in this video, I think I'll check the player over here by simply typing local player equals players colon get player from character, which is going to be the humanoid dot parent. All right, so after that, we're going to check if the name of this player equals to this player, the name of the player whom we want to find. But before that, we also check if the player does exist. Player, then we're doing this because like sometimes if the player leaves the game at that specific frame, this might run an error, but it's pretty rare and almost impossible, but it's still best to check if the player exists over here. And after checking that the player exists, we're simply gonna check if the name of this player equals to the name of the player whom you want to find by simply typing if player dot name equals player to find dot name. And if both of these players' names are equal, what we're going to be doing is we're going to simply check, we're going to simply return true. Or before that, maybe it's better if I create a variable over here, local player found equals false. Like initially, we didn't really find the player, but however, after finding if the player exists, we simply change this player found equals true. And after that, we simply break the loop because we already found the player. And after find the player, so after find the player, what we're going to be doing is we're going to return player found. And that's pretty much how this function works. So what it does is that it checks if the overlapping parts table has parts that belong to this specific player, and if that's the case, it returns true, or else it returns false. Alright, so after creating this specific function, what we're going to be doing now is we're going to go back to the main script, and over here, we're going to check if the player does not exist in the region anymore by simply typing, okay, so we're going to type here as local is exists equals check if player exists in region. And here there are two parameters, which is going to be the overlapping parts table, and the second one is going to be player in region. Okay, so the reason why we are calling this function right now is because we want to check if the player does not exist anymore, because this table, right? Okay, so this table over here keeps getting updated constantly every single frame. All right, so after if the player leaves the region, what actually happens is that these parts will not get printed. These parts won't really be in this table anymore. And if these parts are not in the table anymore, then this function should return false, right? This should be returning false because these parts don't exist anymore. I mean, after if the player leaves the region, then the parts that the player has won't really be there in this specific table anymore. And which is why we're creating this function in the first place. We're checking if the player's parts exist in this overlapping parts table or not. And the player leaves the region because this table will always get updated. It won't always be the same. Like if the player leaves the region, the parts won't really be there anymore. Which is why we're checking over here if we're calling this function to check if the player's parts exist in this region or not. And that's the exact reason why we created this function in the first place. So after checking if the player's parts exist in the overlapping parts table, and here we're going to check if not is existing. Then, and here, okay, so the reason why I'm putting not is because if this returns false, like if the player leaves the region, then this would automatically become false because the parts don't really exist in this table anymore, which is why you won't really be able to find the player's parts' name over here, which is why we're checking if the player's parts exist in the overlapping parts table or not. And over here, we're checking if the player's parts exist or not. And if it does not exist, what we're doing is we want to get the region, just like we did previously. Like over here, we want to get the is region value by simply typing local is in region equals player in region colon wait for child, and over here we're gonna type is in region. And now what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna change the value of this bool value to false by simply typing is in region dot value equals false. And after that, last but not least, we're going to remove the player from the table, which we initially created from this table, by simply typing table. Okay, before that, we're going to check if the player does exist in the table by simply typing local player exists in this region table equals player in region. Okay, sorry. Table dot what dot find, and we're gonna put players in region table, comma, and the player that you want to find, which is player in region. And after that, we're going to check if the player does exist, player exists region. Then all right, so I didn't tell this one more thing, guys, and the reason why we're using this is because we're checking if the player exists in the table or not. And this function usually consists of two parameters. One is the name of the table, and the second is the object that you want to find if that object exists in the table or not. And in this case, it's basically the player in the region. And this usually returns a number, or should I say the indexed value of the player, and usually integers return true. And if this usually would equal to an integer if the player does exist, and all integers usually return true if you put them in a conditional statement, which is why I'm checking if the player does exist or not. And the player does exist, we simply want to remove table dot remove, and the table, which is players in region table, comma, player exists in region table. Because this usually returns a number. This is actually technically a number, not a bool value. And I really want you guys to understand that this would return a number, which is the index of this object, the indexed number of this object, and which is why I'm putting this right over here. And this is not a bool value. All right, so after removing this table, we'll just simply print player player in region dot name. I'm going to concatenate this, and I'm going to type left the region. All right, I think that's pretty much what we're supposed to do. So now if I go to the real game and if I hit run, all right, so now if I enter the region, you'll be able to see out tantrums enter the region. If I go out, you should see that all tantrums left the region. And yes, this is working pretty good. If I go inside, it's printing that enter the region. If I go out, it's printing all tantrums left the region. And yeah, this is pretty much how you script region detection systems. Alright guys, so now after creating the region system, what we're going to be doing now is we're going to be creating the sword giving system. And how do we do that is we first go to server storage, and over here inserted a classic sword that I've got from the creator store. What you can do is you could go to the creator store and basically search for sword and Roblox, and this toolbox has a Roblox's inbuilt sword. What you can do is you could insert it inside of Roblox Studio right over here. And if it asks if you want to put the tool into starter pack, you can just click no. And if you do that, you'll see a sword appearing right over here. And what you can do is you can put the sword inside of the server storage. I'm just going to be having one sword. And now after putting the sword in the server storage, and here what we're doing is we're going to come back to the region script and we're going to create a function that basically gives or destroys a tool by simply typing local function grant or destroy tool, and here we're simply going to put the parameter as player, and we're also going to put another parameter called ownership text. And yeah, I think that's mainly two parameters. Okay, we can also have one more parameter, which is gonna be the tool. And here, okay, so after creating this function, what we're doing is we're going to check the ownership text. And this parameter is going to check if we want to grant the tool or destroy a tool. And here I'll just type if ownership text equals grant first. Let's say you want to grant this specific tool to the player, and here what we're doing is we're gonna get, okay, so you're first gonna clone the tool by simply typing local new tool equals tool colon clone. Oops. And after cloning this tool, we're simply gonna put this tool in the player's backpack by simply typing new tool dot parent equals player dot backpack. Well, you guys might be wondering what the backpack is. Well, if you want, a lot of tools, like usually players' tools are stored inside of the player's backpack. And okay, so let me show you guys where the backpack is. So now if I hit play and if I go to the players section, and under all tantrums, you'll see a specific object called backpack. Wait, where is it? Oh, it's right over here. Yeah, my bad. So the backpack, and as you can see, this is where all of these tools will usually be stored. But right now, I don't really have any tools, which is why there's nothing really there inside of the backpack. And here, I'm going to be inserting that specific tool in this backpack, which is right under the player.backpack. And here is where I'll be storing that specific tool, which is why I'm putting new tool dot parent equals player dot backpack. All right, so after that, what we're doing is we're also going to check if the ownership text equals destroy and then. Alright guys, so this is where you gotta script a bit more because, okay, so now what we're gonna do is we're first going to get the tool, and there are actually two places where this tool can be. One is going to be the player's backpack, and the other is going to be the player's character. Well, you guys might be wondering what I'm talking about. Well, let me just have this sword in the starter pack for now, and I'm going to show you guys what I exactly mean. So right now, when I have this tool, and if I go to the player, as you can see, I have this tool in the player's backpack, like over here, like under the backpack, there is this classic sword. However, if I equip the sword, as you can see, the sword has disappeared, but I still have the tool. Well, it's because Roblox basically swaps the sword's position. It swaps the sword's parent to the character if you equip the sword. Because right now, the sword is not in the backpack, and the sword is in the player's character. So here, this is my character, and if I go under the character, you will see the sword over here. Because, okay, so the reason why this is changing is because whenever you equip the sword goes to the player's character, and if you unequip the sword goes right back to the player's backpack, which is why you want to be checking where the sword exactly exists, because sometimes the player might equip the sword and come out, or the player might unequip the sword and come out, which is why you want to make sure, want to check where this sword exactly exists. Alright, so let me just click stop, and let me just go back to the region script. And now, in order to check where this sword exists, we're simply going to be typing local to destroy. Oh, destroy. Oh my god. ROY. Okay. Destroy equals player dot backpack colon find first child, and which is going to be the tool dot name. The reason why I'm putting name is because the parameter of find first child is usually string, which is why I'm putting tool dot name over here. And also after that, we're going to put or player dot character colon find first child, and here we're going to be putting tool.name as well, because the tool can either exist in the backpack or the tool can also exist in the player's character, which is why I'm checking if the player's tool exists here or here, because any one of them is going to return nil, because it could be this could become nil or this could also become nil, and if one of them becomes nil, the other one is usually true, which is why I'm putting this OR statement over here to compare or to check which one returns true, and if that becomes true, that value basically goes to this variable. So after that, after doing this, we're going to check if the tool exists, if tool to destroy, then, and after that over here we're simply going to destroy the tool colon and destroy. Yeah. Oh my god. And yeah, it's pretty much how you destroy this specific tool. Okay, so now after that, let me just get the sword over here by simply typing local sword equals game dot server storage dot classic sword. Oh wait, okay, I didn't put this in the server storage. Let me just put it back in the server storage and get the classic sword. Okay, so now after getting the sword, we're gonna go back to the region detection script, and right after this becomes true, we're simply gonna call this function, which is grant or destroy tool. And over here, we're gonna type grant or destroy tool, and the first parameter is gonna be the player. That is right over here. We're gonna put this player over here, and the second parameter is gonna be the ownership, which is gonna be grant. We're going to put grant, and the third parameter is going to be a tool, which is going to be the classic sword over here. And I'm also gonna put this exact same function over here right after this becomes false. Like I'm just gonna put it over here, and here it's gonna be destroy. Destroy, and over here I'm gonna put player in region, which is basically the player who is in this specific table. All right, so now after that, now if I go and hit run, all right, so if I go in this region, you should be seeing that the sword comes over here. And now if I go out, the sword gets destroyed. So now if I do this again, the sword comes over here. And if I go out, the sword gets destroyed. And also, since the sword could exist in the character, like right now, if I'm equipping the sword is in the character. But if I unequip the sword is now in the backpack. And to prove this, like right now, like even if the sword is in the backpack, the sword is being destroyed. And the sword is the character, then also it is being destroyed, which is why it's important to check if the sword exists in the backpack or in the character. Alright guys, thank you so much guys for watching this video, and I really hope that this video gave a pretty useful insight as to how region detection and tool giving systems work in Roblox Studio, and I'll see you guys in the next video.